Show is great.
The big show has begun. Yep, we're doing little things different tonight because this maiden voyage for having a live stream for the lesson. So we are going to do things a little bit different. Y'all just enjoy and go with us because right now everything is going out to all our guests in Cyberland. And welcome to Right Connection Church, the small group study on Wednesday night. I'm BJ Johnson. All of y'all know me, and it's just BJ. And we are doing a series called Breakaway by Andy Stanley. We purchased this through North Point Research Resources, and we do a lot of his programs, and excellent to invite the Lord in and let us learn. So we're going to invite him in with us tonight. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the time of gathering, that your word will be spoken. Lord, lift our minds and hearts that we may receive it. Speak through this message so we'll glorify you in our actions. Lord, watch over us and guide us that we may receive your words. In Christ's name. Okay. Y'all remember the breakaway of what we did last week. This one is, as I say, it'll step on your toes. This one is not quite so different. This is a tough one that we went into about your heart. Amazing thing about your heart, it's like a computer. You put garbage in a computer, you're going to get garbage out. You put garbage in your heart, you're going to get garbage out. So we're going to start the video now. Mr. Mike. Nope, you got the wrong remote.
Wow. All right.
Okay.
Trying to turn the volume.
Session 2. There we go. There. Now we got it.
For the next few weeks, here's what we're going to do. I want to give you some breakaway truths. Some big, giant, overarching truths that if you'll begin to embrace these simple truths, we're just going to talk about 4 of them, maybe 5, probably 4. If you'll embrace and digest these 4 truths, it will impact how you make decisions, which will ultimately change the outcome in your life. And the first one I want to give you is so basic that you may be just tempted to yawn and say, I knew that already. Here's a basic truth that's so simple. We all heard it in church or Sunday school, and then we kind of moved on by it. It's so basic and simple that if you're a new Christian or you're new to Christianity or you're just coming back, it's a little bit threatening, even though it's simple. And here it is. Ready? Truth number 1. God knows what's best for you. See, nobody even wrote it down. Well, one lady in the front row, thank you. God, unless that's a grocery list, isn't it? Anyway, God knows what's best for you. I mean, this is huge. It's simple, but it's huge. If you really believe that God knew what was best for you, guess who you would tune into? God. Imagine, no, you don't have to make a decision. What if you really believed that God knew what was best for you? And somehow God communicated to you what to do in a certain area of life. And you decided to do what God said was best for you. Would that not impact the outcome of your life? The corollary is God knows what's best for you better than you know what's best for you. That's the other half of it. That's what we put on the brakes, isn't it? No. I know what's best for me. I know what'll make me happy. I know what'll fulfill me. I know what will satisfy me. I know what will get me to the finish line. I know how to predict and determine the outcomes I want in my life. God says no. I know better than you what will fulfill you. I know better than you what will make you happy. I know better than you what will satisfy the hunger of your soul. I know better than you what will ultimately satisfy your appetites. I know better than you how to get you to the outcomes you so desire, long for, pray for. and dream of. And you've got to make a decision. Who knows best? Now, before you push back on that, let's think a minute. Isn't it true that all of us, and I won't ask you to raise your hand or come up here and share, though it would be very interesting, I'm sure. Isn't it true that you can think back to a time in your life when you made a decision? In fact, I'll ask you to raise your hand in just a second, so play along. How many of you would say, I can think back to a time in my life when I made a decision that I was absolutely sure would make me happy, absolutely sure would bring me joy, absolutely sure would make me content. I was absolutely sure that this decision might have been a relationship decision, might have been a decision to marry somebody, might have been a financial decision, lease a car, buy a car, move, build a house, whatever. I was absolutely sure this would bring me happiness. And after I made the decision and experienced the outcome, I realized that I was absolutely wrong. Anybody say, yeah, I got one of those?
Oh,
Yeah, that's all of us. Yeah. How about this one? Have you ever had this, and I've got a bunch of these, a situation where you knew with absolute certainty that this decision was the right decision, it was going to bring you happiness, it was going to be great, it was what you dreamed of, you planned for, and right at the moment when you were going to be able to make the decision or ink the deal or whatever it is, something happened and it didn't work out. He left you at the altar, and she broke up, or they didn't come through with the money, or your parents changed their mind, whatever it is. At the last minute, it didn't work out, and you were so mad. You were so frustrated. You even might have gotten mad at God and said, God, you know this is what I needed. You know this is what I wanted. I thought you had promised me this. I mean, you were so mad that it didn't work out. And then 6 months or a year later, you look back and went, well, that didn't happen. Got any of those? Oh, yeah. Now, you know what we've just all admitted? Sometimes we don't know what's best for us. That's what that means. At least once in your life, twice in your life, if you're honest, a bunch in your life. It depends on how far we go back. If we start at 13, then we'll have a lot to share at that point. That all of us at some stage in our life, even as adults, will say, you know what, that's true. There were decisions I made. I was so sure this would bring me, what I wanted in life. And at the end of the day, the outcome was not what I anticipated. You know what we all know intuitively? There are times when we really don't know what's best for us. How about this one? How many of you have watched somebody you really cared about or loved, make a decision, and you were absolutely, you would have bet your car the outcome was going to be a disaster. It was so clear to you they were making a huge mistake, and yet they were absolutely confident they were doing the right thing, and sure enough, you were right. You ever watch your friends crash and burn, and maybe you even tried to warn them, and what did they say? No, I know what'll make me happy. It's my life. I know what to do. I've thought this through. So confident. And you stand on the sideline and you watch them make a decision that in some cases they regret the rest of their life. You know why? Because you know what you know about those people? You know that they sometimes don't really know what it takes to make them happy. They don't know what's best for them. And here's the tragedy. Here's why this is so important. Many times, there is a big gap between when the decision is made and when the outcome is felt. You see, sometimes this takes years. Sometimes this is a season of your life. You make a decision as a 16-year-old, and at 25, you're still carrying the consequences of that bad decision that you were sure would make you happy at 16. You make a decision, and sometimes it's years later when you begin to feel the outcome and you realize, this isn't the outcome I was hoping for. This wasn't the outcome I was planning on. And you've spent a season of your life, a chapter of your life, years of your life gone. When you were absolutely sure you knew what was best for you, you made a decision based on what you believe was best for you, and all of a sudden, it's not working out. And it's not, I made the decision on Wednesday, and Thursday I knew it was a mistake. It's I made the decision on Wednesday, and 6 years later, I'm realizing, worst decision of my life. You see, this is a big deal. This is important. And here's the big overarching truth. At some point, you've got to come to grips with. You don't always know what's best for you. God always knows what's best for you. You and I don't always know what it takes to make us happy and fulfilled. God who created us, the sun, moon, and stars, 600 kind of beetles, and put enough information in one of your cells to fill up the encyclopedia, okay? He knows what's best for you. And if you would ever renovate your thinking and decide, you know what, I'm taking out the I always know and I'm replacing it with the God always knows, it will change the way you make decisions. it will change the outcomes of your life. Now, if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to an Old Testament book of the Bible called Proverbs. Proverbs is a lot of wisdom sayings. They're kind of random. If you try to read through a chapter of Proverbs, it's kind of hard because they keep changing the subject. Proverbs chapter 3. And we're going to just look at 2 verses, and they're pretty familiar verses if you grew up in church. If not, these may be new verses. These are on your memory verse cards. I would encourage you to memorize these verses. And in these 2 verses, the author basically says this in somewhat of a creative way. But here's what's interesting about these verses. What's interesting is who said it. Because the author of this part of Proverbs is King Solomon, who you've heard of, who was the wealthiest man in the world at the time, the most powerful man in the world at the time. He ruled Israel during the golden age of Israel, where if you lived in the world, you wanted to be Jewish because what was happening in Israel was unbelievable. He was so wise that kings from different nations would come to him for advice. He was so powerful that his wealth was immeasurable. And if ever there was a guy who could say, you know what, for everybody else, you probably need to figure out what God has to say, but I'm wise enough, smart enough, and control outcomes to the point where I don't need to worry about what God says. I can control the outcomes. I can control what happens as a result of my decisions. Therefore, I know what's best for King Solomon. And yet this wise, powerful man wrote these words and in essence tells us what we just said, that God knows what's best. Let's listen to these phrases. We'll go, trust your heart, honey. What is your heart telling you? Well, it depends on which day you ask me, to be honest. You know what King Solomon said? He says, no. You don't trust your heart. You trust the Lord with your heart. Sometimes your heart is right. Sometimes your heart is wrong. You don't trust your heart. You don't trust in what your heart is telling you. He says, no, you submit the messages and the inclinations and the passions of your heart. You submit those to the Lord. That you don't trust in your heart, you trust the Lord with your heart. I mean, come on. All of us have made decisions we regret based on what our heart was telling us, right? And what's weird about your heart, today your heart tells you he's the one. 3 years later, your heart's telling you he's not the one.
Yeah.
The next week, your heart's going, well, maybe he was the one. Then the heart says, maybe you should look for another one. I mean, come on. We know this, and yet there's something in us that says, no, I know what's best for me. I can trust my heart. Solomon says, whoa, time out. Sometimes your heart's right, sometimes your heart's wrong. You don't trust your heart. You trust your Heavenly Father with your heart. And look what he says. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and this is huge, and do not lean on your own understanding. This is huge. He uses the word trust and the word lean interchangeably. Whenever the Hebrews would write these little couplets, they would take 2 concepts and say it the same way, to the same thing, 2 different ways. And so what he's saying is this. He's saying, don't lean on your own understanding or don't trust in your own understanding. He's not saying don't try to understand. He's not saying it won't ever make sense. He's not saying don't ask God why. He's saying here's what he's saying. When it comes down to your reasoning and God's opinion rules. When it comes down to your reasoning, this is the way I understand relationships work. This is the way I understand finances work. This is the way it's done in my industry. This is the way I was taught. When it comes to your understanding and God's command trumps your reasoning. That's what he's saying. Now, this is not a new concept either. See, when you were a child, especially when you were a teenager, remember you would sit with your parents and you would argue with them. And an argument with your parents meant you were giving your parents all the reasons why they were wrong. And you would argue and reason. And at the end of the reasoning, they would say, no. And their no trumped your reasoning. And you say, but mom, come on, wait, mom. You see, the later I stay up at night and watch television, the more active my brain is, okay? And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in class at 8 o'clock first period. And the shorter the distance is between the time I go to sleep and shut off my brain, I have to wake up my brain. Look, there's just a little bit of time. But if I go to bed early, look how long my brain is inactive and think how much longer it's going to take in the morning to get it active by first period. So it makes more sense for me to stay up later and keep my brain active so that it's easier to activate at 8 o'clock in the morning. I should stay up later.
Maybe.
Sounds good.
Fascinating. No. You go to bed. Her rule trumps your reason. Okay, you laugh, but every time you got pulled over by the police for speeding, same thing. Because you had a perfectly good reason, right? officer, you see out there, and he's riding, you get the whole deal, and the speedometer is up to 120, and why waste all that potential at 55? And the faster I drive, the faster I'll be home and off the road if I'm not a safe driver. And you got all these reasons. And when you're done explaining your reasons, he says, "Here's your ticket." No, the law trumps your reasoning. See, this is all Solomon is saying. He said, look, when you're willing to embrace the simple truth, God knows what's best. God knows what's best. Then you run all your decisions through what you believe is the will of God. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Once you kind of get an angle, once you kind of get a hunch that you know what God would have you do, maybe you take the scripture seriously. Maybe it's a matter of conscience. Maybe it's a matter of you just don't want to face it, but you just kind of know if you were to ask God, what would you say do? It wouldn't be what you've reasoned yourself into doing. However you get there. When you've embraced the fact that God knows best, then when your reasoning conflicts with God's law, God's word, God's principles, God's instructions, however you want to phrase it, then God's will trumps your reasoning. I'm not going to lean on my understanding. I'm not going to lean and trust in my heart. I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to pay attention. But when it comes down to do I know what's best for me or does God know what's best for me? I'm going to allow God's will, his word, his ways to trump my human reasoning. You see, that you can already imagine. That will lead to a different kind of decision making. And it will result in different kinds of outcomes. Look at the next part of this. In all, that would be all. The Hebrew for all is all, everyone. In all your ways, and ways is basically arenas of life. In all your arenas of life, in your marriage, finances, the way you deal with friends, the way you deal with conflict, what happens ethically in your profession and the way that you manage people, in all of your ways, in your parenting, your disciplining, in all of your ways, check this out, acknowledge him. And the Hebrew word for acknowledge is not a little word, the Hebrew word for acknowledge always shows up in context of submission. He's saying, in all your ways, I want you to submit to him. In other words, it's saying, God, here's how I was taught to parent. What do you have to say? God, here's how I've always viewed my relationship with my husband or wife in marriage. What do you have to say? I'm acknowledging you. God, here's the struggle I have with my parents, and here's what I'm tempted to do. What do you have to say? God, here's what I'm thinking about in terms of the next step in this relationship. What do you have to say? God, my friends think I should just move in. What do you have to say? In all of your ways, in every arena of life, acknowledge him. That is, bring your human reasoning, your patterns, your trends, your thoughts, what you bring it all under the submission and say, God, I'm acknowledging you. I'm acknowledging your right to rule in this arena of my life, even though nobody else thinks you ought to have anything to say about the economy and business in my particular area in the marketplace. I'm acknowledging him in all your ways. It's simply saying to admit God knows what's best. In all your ways, acknowledge him and look at the conclusion. And he will make your path straight. Now, this little phrase is translated different ways in different English Bibles, and it all kind of says the same thing, but let me kind of flesh this out because this is really cool. The word path, if you looked at the way the Hebrew writers use paths in the whole Old Testament, if you put it all together, you'd come up with the conclusion. Essentially, this means lifestyle or the way you live. In all your lifestyle and all the way you live and your entire way of life, he will, look what he says, and he will make your lifestyle or your way of life straight. And straight in the Old Testament, it means upright. Sometimes it means prosperous. Sometimes it means blessed. But essentially what the writer of Hebrew, what the writer of Proverbs is saying, what Solomon says is this, that if you will acknowledge God's ways, and you will make decisions based on his instruction, then he's going to bring you to pleasant outcomes. He's going to make your lifestyle good. He's going to make your lifestyle blessed. He's going to make your lifestyle, in some ways, enviable. That he's going to bring you to good outcomes. That's the promise of this proverb. And it doesn't begin with, I hope you can make good decisions based on your ability to put two and two together. He says, no. It begins when you acknowledge that God is God and you're not. When you're willing to acknowledge, even if I don't understand it, I believe that God's ways are best for me, and God knows better than I do how to make me happy and fulfilled and purposeful. And I'm going to make decisions based on that big, giant, overarching belief. And God says, in the process, I'll make your path straight. I will make your lifestyle blessed. I will bring you to a pleasant place. The outcomes of your life will be, in some cases, what you've always dreamed of, in many cases, better, in some ways, different. But I'll be a part of guiding you to those outcomes. You know what's interesting is, and I say this all the time because this is so important. You see, if you were to take me back to the chapter of your life you regret the most, I believe, no matter I haven't even heard your story, I believe the chapter of your life you regret the most could have been avoided if you had decided at the beginning of that chapter, God knows better than I do. Right? That moment, that weekend, that spring break, that business deal, that marriage, that partnership, whatever it was. The chances are, if in that moment you had really believed God knows best what will make me happy, and God knows best how to handle my business, and if you had acknowledged Him in all your ways, chances are your greatest regret would have been avoided. Not because you're so smart, but because God is so smart. Because God knows what's best for you.
God knows what's best for you. But his line of thinking there on that last statement about you go out and do something. I wonder how many people have went out, bought a house before they was truly ready, and then asked God to bless it, versus asking God, bless it first, and then follow God's instructions. Working from the heart. That's a tricky, dangerous situation. I found a little passage. Let's see if I can pull it up here for you. I love electronic Bible when it works. Let's see here. Mark 7:20. Jesus was talking to his disciples. He said, then he added, it's what comes from inside that defiles you. From within, out of a person's heart, comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, lustful desires, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these vile things come from within. They are what defiles you. So it's not really your heart, but it is kind of like what you put in it that will cause you problems. So many people want to base the decisions by the heart. And the heart is a good thing. It will lead you to do right stuff if you have God in there first. And you run it by Him. Because I'll admit, I'm a dummy. I ain't that smart. He's the one that designed the earth. I didn't. I think He's a whole lot smarter than I am. And He knows more about me than I really care to share, and probably more about me than I really know. So, you parents that raised your children, did you ever hit a situation where you know more about what they need than they did? What was good for them? Would a kid choose to have ice cream for supper every night, or vegetables? Brenda grew up on ice cream, but you know better. So God knows. And here's a good question. Has your heart ever misled you into making a bad decision? What role did your emotions play in that decision? And describe it. Did your heart ever lead you to make a bad decision? I was thinking about that one, and for the younger folks, I wonder how many children was conceived on prom night unexpected. Because their heart led them to make a bad decision. Unexpected. Remember what he was talking about? The decision, the belief you had, the decisions you make affects the outcomes. When you're 16, you may be 25 and still have that same, you got the outcome. God can still use that bad decision or that improper decision he can still make it work. But has your heart ever misled you into making a bad decision? I've done it in finances. I bought things that my heart said, you're going to enjoy. I did. I didn't enjoy the payments. 7.5 years to make it through, but we got it. How well did that work? What role did your emotions play in it? Your emotions will guide your heart real quick. It'll make a lot of it. And I can't be the only one that's ever made a decision like that. Y'all throw something back at me. Everybody's done it. Everybody has done it. I don't care if it's, like I said, taking the fantastic plastic and running out there to buy a dress that's on sale for 10% off and put it on a card at 21% interest. You've done it. You know, that was and that one little dress might take you 3 years to pay off, 10% off, and you're going to pay 40 times what it actually costs, just in interest. But your heart and your emotions, I got to have that. So it can do it. Anybody got one? We can share. Can't nobody see y'all. We can share.
Credit card thing like you.
Credit card. It's so easy to do.
First one, when I was newly single, I don't know where I got it, maybe in the mail or something, just got divorced. I had a credit card and wanted something, I didn't have money. Now let's try this. Wow, that was easy. I like that.
That's like that big Staples button.
Yeah.
That was easy. You know?
Didn't take long to get out of control.
That fantastic plastic. But which one led you first? Was it your emotions that did it, or was your heart that did it?
Probably emotions. I haven't thought about it.
Your emotions will kind of spur your heart on. It's like jump starting it, and you feel that little flutter. And, you know,
It'll cloud your reason.
it will. And everybody's like that. We all have little things we want. And I've seen it before. And, you know, you ladies that wear the leather outfits, you know, nothing wrong with that. But if you'll get next to an all-American male and you'll watch, all of a sudden, his face will turn a little red up here and he'll start sweating and you'll see the nostrils flaring out. All you got to do is just stand there next to him wearing a leather outfit and he'll start perspiring and just, you can see his heart just pounding. You know why? You smell like a new truck. And he wants to have one. And you remind him, you smell like a new truck. That's where the emotions and the heart is playing.
That didn't go where I thought it was going at all.
But it's true. And, you know, a southern boy down here, you smell like a new truck. They'll go to the dealership and be looking. And there again, we can get it if you don't mind paying the payments. But that's a decision made by letting the heart and the emotions take over. And now you're going to have about a 10-year time to pay that off. We looked at one and he come in there and was real happy and said, here it is, your brand new truck. You can drive it home for $989. And I said, what is that? The zip code, area code, or what? He said, no, that's the payment. $989 a month for 10 years. And I laughed. And he wanted to know what it'd take to get us to drive it home. And I said, a miracle. And I don't see that happening. So we still got my old Dodge and Linda's bid. So you got to watch it. Your heart will lead it. Yes, sir.
I think another thing is your emotions can come into play when you're picking the church. And some people decide to up and leave a church because maybe they get a little squirmish in the seat one day because the message isn't what they want to hear.
Very, very true.
They're going to search out someplace where the message is what they want to hear and not what they need to hear.
Getting a church that is based on your emotions and your heart before you run it through God. And I'm just honest. People have asked me what kind of people go to your church. And I have a canned answer, and I'll tell you flat out, we're just a bunch of sinners trying to do better. And anybody who's above that, you need to really look at where we are together. Because we're just a bunch of sinners trying to do better. Now, for a small church, we got a lot of love here. We got a big heart. But everything is run through Christ. Everything comes through God. And that's what we lead by.
I have one thing to say. I give all credit for this one here because before she met me, I was a heavy smoker. I had a bad attitude about life. Cursing like a sailor. I come to the house. She said, Alan, those cigarettes have got to go. I try to stick tobacco in the house. Canned tobacco was gold.
No.
She said she's going to put it back in the ground where it's supposed to come from. And then somewhere along the line, I owe all credit to Joe and my mom because they had a lot to do with it too. My mom and Joe wanted me to change, be a better person, and I'm glad to be here. And God bless you. Listen to what you're saying.
God, follow God
in the right
in your
place.
heart. Just following God in your heart is what will make the difference there. Next one. Now, everybody get your toes up unless you're wearing steel toes. Looking back on your life, are there any decisions you were glad you did not make? One big bushel basket after the other. There is so many decisions that I was in the process of making, but that little voice and a power greater than I can even imagine is the one that took over and prevented me from doing some very stupid, very hurtful things to people. And I am glad that those decisions did not go through. I had already committed, but God knows what's best for you, even if you don't. And all it needs is a little tiny bit in your heart of Him. And He's going to look out for you. But you have to be doing something for Him too. You have to be willing to do His will. Anybody got one that you glad you didn't make?
I usually went ahead and made them and I'm paid for it.
Yeah, most of us did. We went ahead and made the decision, and yeah, that didn't work out. So now we got to do something different. This here. Yep. So we've all are glad there were decisions we didn't make. The decisions you made in high school, they're a lot different now than you're a little more chronologically gifted. You've got more experience now. And some of the decisions that you was thinking about making then, you find you really wasn't, you didn't know enough to know that you don't know. Live and learn. We had to grow. So, yeah, there's plenty of places along our path of life. They're not all easy, but there's quite a few that you're probably glad you didn't make. So, several vehicles that I went to get, I'm glad I didn't get. Several purchases, several relationships. You know, it wasn't in the best interest of God, and God said it wasn't in my best interest, so it didn't go through. Anybody got one? Anybody willing to admit they got one? I can't be the only one that's messed up in life. Next. Describe a time when you chose God's reasoning over your own. Now that's a tough one. I have received his word spoken to me several times, and I stopped to listen and pay attention. And it has kept calamity from coming my way. Quite a few times over. Where I sit today, I chose God's reasoning over mine. As starting out with Russell and coming through being a deacon, I chose God's reasoning over mine. It didn't make humanly in the real, it didn't make sense to step up to go in that office. Went to an elder. In human thinking, why would anybody want to do that? And then the other week, with the blessings of the congregation and quite a few others, I took on the role as pastor. In common sense and just man off the street that has no idea of following God's reasoning, they would say, why would you even want to do something like that? It ain't for the pay, but it is to please God. And that's the only reason why. I wish to glorify Him, not me. It is to His glory that my work to help others is what I want. So to choose God's reasoning over your own, it's a whole lot easier to sit down and get the remote, grab your recliner, pull it back to the loser position, and sit there with the remote and watch TV all night long. It's a whole lot easier to do that than it is to get involved and try to help somebody. It's a whole lot easier to kick back and relax, and you don't have to study anything, you don't have to look up nothing. It's man's thought versus God's thought. I want God to guide my heart. I want Him in there and making decisions for me and guiding me to His decisions, not me guiding Him to my decisions. My decision will be wrong. Many, many times over. Anybody got one where you chose God's reasoning over your own?
I think I did when I got baptized.
When you got baptized, that is a good.
When I grew up in the church, the Catholic church, so we were baptized as babies. I don't remember that.
You're too young, huh?
And it was actually another church we went to, Calvary Chapel, where it started. It was a Wednesday night group. We were talking about baptism, and what it really is, and what it really means. And we had the point. I guess I didn't do that.
It is a public expression of the inward feeling, just the inward knowledge that you have God in here. And it's the public expression that you have been washed of your old self, washed of the sins, raised back in God's grace, clean and renewed. That's baptism. It's the decision from within, and it's God's reasoning. Yes, sir.
I'm baptized twice. Had to realize no matter where I go, God's always watching over me.
It is. Wherever you're at.
He'll never forsake me or put me away. He's always there watching over me.
Yep. I've used the
Glad I
expression.
came here to meet Mr. BJ. I like you, man.
It's as I described in a shower, and we've had them this week, the rain that comes. If you got the big umbrella, it protects you. Well, God's love is like that. His protection is the umbrella over everything around you. But if you hold it over here in a rainstorm and you out here, you're going to get wet. But you ain't released from the protection of it. You have to bring yourself back under it. God's that way. His protection is there for you. His reasoning is there. But choose His reasoning over your own. Anybody got something? No? Yes, sir.
I think I hate to admit it, but I choose his reasoning sometimes when I get so low trying to drive it myself that I just have to let go and let him take over.
Yes.
And it really needs to be the other way around. But that's just
When
the inner nature of a human is to try to
we're going to do it ourselves.
do it ourselves.
Yeah. The inner nature is, I broke it, I can fix it. That's the inner nature. And we drag it out so long. Most of us, when we start getting the sniffles, we don't run to the doctor. And then before you realize it, that little sniffle left untreated has now become the flu. And that flu has now become pneumonia. And just for the fun, for us chronologically gifted people, that pneumonia has just now become the shingles. All because you failed to pay attention to the sniffles. So it's a progressive thing that'll get worse in your life. If you know you have a problem, you know you're sinning, turn it to the ultimate healer. Bring it back to him. Go with his reasoning over your own. Next. Do you agree that God always knows what's best for you? Why not? Do you really have that belief in your heart that he knows what's best for you?
Yeah, whether they do it or not.
Whether we do it or not is a different story. That goes to a different question. But as in the first three segments, the segment that he shows on the sign, your belief, decisions, and the outcome. So do you agree that he knows what's best for you?
Hey, that's about right.
Mm-hmm. He's the designer. He's the creator. Anybody ever watch Robot Wars? They're on, I think it's on Sci-Fi, where they build these robots and they fight and they tear each other up, and whoever's running at the end. It's a demo derby for robots.
Yeah.
You know, and it's good. They have some good machines they build. But the one who knows how to work it the best is the one who created it and built it. The other team don't know what this team has. You could switch them two around and nobody would win. Because they built it. They know how it works. They know its capabilities. They know what it's going to do. And when I look up, I know God built us. He built me. He knows what I'm capable of. I don't. In my weakness, that's when he's strong. And y'all see that on Sundays, and my heart just goes, the emotions gets there. I can put myself and see the history. I put myself in there, and it brings tears to my eyes, my heart, because I know what Christ went through. And even though I read the book and folks say it's history, well, it's living history. I know in my heart what he went through. He's in my heart, and it comes out. And I have to agree. He always knows what's best. We may not like what he says he wants us to do. We may not like his timing of what he wants us to have. Did any of your children throw fits when you didn't give them the toy they wanted? I love that little Christmas song parody of What Child Is This? It's the one that, what child is this who's throwing a fit in the toy aisle at Kmart? They want that, but you know better. You've got something already picked out for them, and they have no clue. He's got us picked out. Now we're dealing between the real versus ideal, and ideally we won't have the sins. Reality, we do. He still loves us. He still knows what's best for us, and that's what he wants. Next one. Okay, now here's a toe getter. If everybody want to lift your feet, I'll understand. In what areas of your life is it most difficult to choose God's reasoning over your own? In what areas is it the easiest? And there are so many of them that it just floods my mind. Finances is one of the biggest ones. I've also heard that the strongest cord in a person's body is the one between their heart and their wallet. And they won't pull the two and let them separate. Ain't gonna happen. Most difficult to choose God's reasoning. God gave me about tithing. Simple little thing of that. Many people do not pick that up though. Well, they just going to use that money for other stuff. No. It ain't that what they're going to do with it. It's what God has told you to do with it. God gave it to you and he said, give 10% back. Test me on this. That is the only place in the Bible that you says to test the Lord. On that one little simple thing. Giving. People will choose their own reasoning over that. People will choose their reasoning over what he said there about finding a church that will tell them what they want to hear, that will agree with their belief. And if their belief is not based in God's reasoning, they got a hard search. But what do you think of an area that is so difficult in life to choose God's reasoning? Some of the youngers that's really want to get married, they're not putting God first in their relationship. They want to mate. They want to fall in love and get married. Okay, nothing wrong with that. If God's reasoning's in play first, do it in that good time. You know, I talk about the modern day romances, and y'all see them. The television's full of them all the time. Yeah, boy and girl, they go out, they meet, they have a few dates, they move in together, have a baby, go buy a house, then get married.
Yeah.
You know, all the ingredients in there, but it's kind of out of God's reasoning for what's really happening. Now, the end result after they get married, God's reasoning comes into play, and it washes out everything that happened prior to that, and they move on to a great, fulfilled life through Christ. Nothing wrong with that. But there's so many places that you're going to choose your own reasoning over what God wants for you. And God knows what's best for you. I've read through the Bible a bunch. I've not read one passage where it says he's out to get you. Nowhere have I found that yet, that he wants to harm you. He wants to cause you to fall and stumble. I haven't found it. Anybody know where that's at in Scripture?
Yeah.
I'll look it up. I haven't seen that yet. His reasoning over your own. Anybody ever got one? Where it's most difficult to choose his reasoning over your own?
Thinking about doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about doing something wrong. It might feel good at the time, but is it worth it? It ain't worth it for the end result. Remember what I was talking about, the 10 years of payment? I pick up trustees all the time for child support and have them working with us. And that's a debt they're having to pay. And they don't like it. And I ask, have you chose God's reasoning first. If you get God's reasoning in line, I don't think you have to worry about all the other stuff in life. Even though we come into the world as a cave, none of us are perfect. Every one of us have made mistakes and will make mistakes. We all want to stumble and fall. But when we do, they get back up to his reasoning and know what not to do. Addictions. It can be shopping. It can be alcohol, narcotics, parking lot pharmaceuticals, anything, any addiction that is driving your life. It could be work. I know workaholics that that's the way they're geared. They want to work 80, 100 hours a week. Addictions. Are you choosing God's reasoning over that? You think God had any addictions? In the southern term, in the redneck way, I don't see any of them ever starting off with, here, hold my wine. I just don't see that happen. You know, our rednecks, we will do that. Here, hold my beer. And, you know, something's getting ready to go downhill. He failed to understand God's reasoning. So, you know, your addictions. Extramarital affairs. Running around. Stealing. You know, it's the things like that that can trip you up so easy. And it can get out of hand. We were joking about the fantastic plastic for shopping, the credit cards. You know, yeah, that's fantastic plastic till you get that monthly statement coming in. And then you realize you've created a monster you can't feed.
I was trying to do one time.
Yeah.
My papa, I heard her daddy, and had a whole bunch in my wallet. My brother Frankie had all my wallet, credit cards, my wallet. My papa was sitting there. My young brother Frank was sitting there, and he was in the kitchen. And my papa says, Frank, go in the drawer and get them scissors inside that drawer right there beside the stove. And they always chop my face gone.
It can get out of hand though.
I was getting them bills I couldn't pay.
Yes. Do you see where God reasoning over your own? Because it was easier to choose.
And now
It's more difficult to choose God's reasoning on your finances than it is your own. Because
when I got in from the bank, I ain't got all the eggs. I'm still getting them things coming in the mail about come get us some Visa, MasterCard.
Yeah.
You got to file 13.
yeah, get it. They don't mind
Nothing's
one
free.
bit. Nothing's free. But the reasoning there, he don't want you enslaved. And that'll put you back in slavery. The finances.
We talk a lot.
You can create a problem real quick and be on bondage to where, as he said back there, you just so far down, you don't see any hope. And it can really destroy everything in your life and everything around you. So you don't want to do that. What areas is it easiest? Now that's good. I'm trying to put it his will first. And everything I do, my prayers in the morning is my words and my actions to glorify you. Not me. It ain't about me no more. It's about God and Jesus Christ. That's the easiest for me. And I ask for the opportunity and I ask for the strength and wisdom to share it. That's all. That's the easiest part for me. The lady right there, I love it. Just share like she does. To share God's message. To go out, just complete strangers. Boy, the tenacity you got is just heartfelt and wonderful. And that's what it's about. And just being willing to let God's reasoning come in. Next one. What decisions can you make right now regarding God's reasoning that will enable you to lead a breakaway life? Mine is putting Him first in everything that I do. And that's my goal that I'm trying. Am I 100% accurate? I'd be lying to you if I said I was. And anybody else who says they are would probably lie about other stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to put His reasoning there. I want to have the mindset that He has to share with others. I want to be able to lift others up with His words. I'm willing to be used by Him. And decisions I make is, yes, I don't mind. Yes, I will put forth the effort. Yes, I will listen to what He tells me. And yes, I will do my best to do what He tells me to do. So, to lead a breakaway life, I want to break away from the old sin. I want to break away from my old self. The bondage, the slavery that the sin had me under. I want to break away from that. And when you break away, what do you got? You have a new life. And that's the goal, to have a new life in Jesus Christ, with God reasoning in your heart to know that He knows what's best for you. Because we don't even know enough to know that we don't know. So we're going to have God in our heart. And we're going to have a breakaway life. It's that simple. We want to say goodnight to all our cyber friends in just a second. We'll close this session with prayer. I am thankful that we can come and share the Word of God, that we can learn together. And as a family, back each other up, support each other, lift each other up. And when we need help, we know we have the church as a body with God's presence and His reasoning in us that we can lean on. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank You now that we can humbly come before You, that we can hear Your words, that we can learn, that You are here with us, and we give You praise for that. Lord, we ask that You guide us, that You give us a mindset, that You give us a heart set of Your reasoning in us, that we will be looking for You to guide our path, that we will glorify You in what we do, and we will share Your words with others that You put in front of us. We will seek them out and share the good news of Your love, Your mercy, and Your grace. Now, Lord, protect us and guide us as we go forward, strengthen us, and keep us in Your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay. We are now